back to Chicago and now up to Milwaukee. So yeah, it's very tiring, but all good fun, you know. And then you get to hang out in the guitar center and try out guitars, so that's all good.
Yeah, that's a frequent fan stop at the Guitar Center. Did the fans recognize you and swarm you for autographs?
No, not really. I mean, there's a couple of guys in here sort of definitely were curious who we were, sort of thing, but everyone's too young to recognise us these days. They work in a guitar center.
Well, I'm not young. I'm old enough to clearly remember the 80s, but I've been a music fan and a writer for quite some time now, so I've got some questions for you. And I hope they're different than what other sites have asked you. There might be some overlap, but I really appreciate you talking with us. I'm the owner and editor of a website called Bluebird Reviews, and we're independent from the mainstream media. We're slowly growing, and we like to ask the more obscure questions and work with artists in a different way. So here's my first question. It's a little bit silly, but are you here to save radio? What's happened to radio?
I'd like to be here to save radio. I'd like to save the music business, you know, but whether that's possible these days, I don't know. But yeah, I certainly miss it, you know.
What do you think of the changes in the American content of radio?
Well, it's sort of sad, I think. You know, I mean, you know, I think the thing with the internet is, you know, that you get this kind of concentration of power, if you like, you know, at the top end, you know, which is all very sort of bland and, you know, trying to sell you stuff that we really don't want, you know. But the lack of variety on that means that people do look for alternatives. And of course, the other thing that the internet provides is all these thousands of alternatives. So there's all sorts of hit little stations that are sort of setting up, and that's all very cool. But the thing is trying to get your name out there into the mainstream, as it were, so that you get some attention, you know. So it's always an interesting balance, I think.
I think so too. We work with a lot of unsigned bands as well, and so many of them are just excellent and trying to get their name out there. And it seems like they seem to hit a glass ceiling of other bands that are just, you know, frankly stuttering. So it's very hard to watch it happen. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's always been hard. You know, but we're on a bit of a negative sort of flow with this, you know, because I think if you've got talent, you know, then there's always room for you to get through, you know. But it does take a lot of application. You know? And I know when Nick and I were starting out, you know, we certainly didn't make it off of our first band. You know, there was no overnight success. It took us a good sort of 4 or 5 years to really get signed, you know, to a decent label, you know, with a decent kind of viable band. You know? But you learn how the business works. You know, it's not a transparent leap from you in your bedroom writing a song to appearing on, you know, some big festival. You know, it takes time. But I think if you are dedicated to it and you're sort of receptive as well as putting out stuff, you know, then you can make your way through.
Yeah. So I guess the message is not to give up.
Well, absolutely, never give up.
Yeah, never give up.
And I think sort of, you know, I mean, there's some friends of mine in a band called Siddhartha who are based in the same city that I live in the UK, in Canterbury. And, you know, they've been working on their stuff for probably 7-8 years. You know, they're young guys. But they are now in the States and have a lot of attention here and are probably going to sign a major label deal, I would imagine. And, you know, they've done a huge amount of work themselves, put out an album themselves last year, you know. But they work to a totally professional standard, you know. And they're getting the deserts, you know, the attention that they deserve now, you know. And so I think, yeah, they will never give up. But those guys, you know, they couldn't do anything else. They are musicians through and through. And I think with musicians, it's like myself, you know, I'm still doing it. You know, I don't want to do anything else. I still love doing it. I'm still fascinated by music. So it's a great journey to take. I think success is, you know, a great bonus, of course.
Yes.
But keep it going. You know, just never give up. That's definitely the motto.
Oh, that's well said. Yeah, we listened to your new record, Tazer Up. Is it Tazer Up or Abducted by the 80s?
What, Tazer Up.
Tazer Up. I love it. And
great.
It made me think, this is kind of out there, but it made me think of that hypnotist, Milton Erickson, because he operated to address the human psyche on simultaneous levels. And I think with you coming back into the mainstream music scene, with that record, you tend to answer all the questions that people have in their minds, that we're moving on from the 80s, that you sort of subtly and not so subtly speak to that. But you also take the record, I think, into the future of doing some creative things people haven't thought of yet.
Okay. Well, that's lovely. I mean, I do think that the record has some very modernist kind of things on it, as well as a really healthy respect for the past. And also, I think CHUNG is a band that has a kind of core identity in the sound.
Right.
Which enables us to use genre in a very different way from most bands. One of my pet hates is the fact that when people talk about music these days, they're always talking about genre.
Right.
I mean, they don't talk about artists. And I feel that music is always defined by the really great artists. And those great artists, whether it be Bob Dylan or the Beatles or Radiohead or whatever, they use genre to sort of extend their range, if you like, by taking different styles and so on. Then they're not sort of limited by it. So and that's what we definitely try and do on Tazer Up. So you have a kind of the opening song is, to me, a sort of rock song in the manner of, say, Back in the USSR by the Beatles or for the White Album. You have a piano ballad, you have sort of electro rock, you have a sort of homage to Pink Floyd, Stargate in the last track. And, I kind of feel that sort of gender bending is the way to go.
Right.
And it's kind of what you have to say within that that's important, not whether you hit a particular kind of style, in a certain way. So,
I agree. I'm also a writer for the Boston Blues Society, and they're very strict about their genre, and it's interesting to to visit with them for a while and see what's defined as blues and not as blues, what's defined as jazz, what's on the edge there, and then to come back to my site where we just love music that pushes the genres. We just love to be on the edge, and we don't like to define it.
That's what I'm interested in. It's always the boundaries. It's always the hybrids that combine things.
Yeah.
I also have a sort of jazz project back in the UK, and I say jazz always in inverted commas because I'm not a jazz musician if we're talking in terms of genre. But over the last 10, 15 years, I've really studied the genre a lot and played in various lineups and stuff. And my writing has really been influenced a lot by sort of Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk. And I feel that those influences, although I keep them separate from CHUNG in the jazz project, they still sort of bleed across in a way. And I think certainly if you come see CHUNG live, there's a sense that the band is quite a musical trip that you go on with the band.
Right.
And a lot of the songs are kind of extended and have guitar solos and stuff. So it's again, the hybrid is what always interests me. The pure thing is great, but the hybrid is always fascinating.
I agree, and you answered my next question, which was to talk to me about your work with Sam Bailey on their jazz piece.
Okay.
It's called The Quartet on Helium Records, you say?
That's right, the Quartet,
Yeah.
We call it Jack Hues and the Quartet because we've found that just being called the Quartet is a bit anonymous.
Oh, right.
But,
some of the names repeat themselves.
Sam's a fascinating musician. He's a guy I met when he was just out of college. And he's a jazz piano player, very, very talented, but he's not hung up on technique. He's very much about expression. And he's also very interested in music like John Cage and Derek Bailey. In fact, he's recently completed a PhD on improvisation and is really interested in free improv.
Wow.
So the latest incarnation of the quartet is more leaning in that direction. I mean, I don't go all the way with free improv. I always like to sort of have harmonic structure in there and stuff. But it's very interesting working with Sam and also with a couple of guys who are in a band called Led Zeppelin, who are a very big band in the UK, the jazz circle. They won the Mercury Music Prize, which is a sort of award for cutting-edge music, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so Mark and Loran are the bass player and drummer, respectively, in the quartet of the band. And they are musicians where it's Sam as well. If you're trying to tell them what to do, they don't respond very well. But if you just kind of set out a space for them to be great in, they take off. So again, as a composer for me, that whole sense of what you have to do is kind of get out of the way
yes.
try and dictate everything. It is very healthy, and I love working with this guy.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to the Newport Jazz Festival later this week, and I just can't wait to get there and just take it, just be part of the air, part of the atmosphere that's there.
Yeah, there's fantastic energy to be out there.
It's just wonderful.
Yeah.
Now you spent some time with Tony Banks of Genesis way back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I did an album with him back in 1995, was it? I think something like that. Tony does solo albums periodically. These days he's much more interested in orchestral music actually than making pop records.
Fascinating.
For his solo stuff. And but yeah, we did an album together, and that was great. He's a very kind of exacting musician, quite precise and scientific in the way that he works. And I like that. I can do precise and scientific. and I did all the vocals for his record, and wrote some other lyrics as well, because he couldn't be bothered. But it was great. It was great hanging out with him. Great talking about Genesis, because I was a huge sort of Peter Gabriel Genesis fan. I don't think Tony would mind me saying that I wasn't such a huge fan of their pop period, but although they did some great stuff in that, but I bought all the early Genesis records when I was a kid, and I was pretty obsessed with all that stuff. So it's a great honour to work with him, and sort of be taken into the fold for a while.
Yeah, I'm a huge Genesis fan too, and a very big Peter Gabriel fan. In fact, your song Stargazing on the new album reminded me of his album Up, where his music at that point was more art, and some of the more mainstream fans didn't really understand it, but I loved it, and I've seen him on tour a few times, and he's just fantastic. We reviewed his show last year. He was in Boston. He's just
great.
An artist, really, just fantastic, Peter Gabriel.
No, he's a very interesting artist, I think, and he's constant sort of questing after, the hybrids in a sense, that sort of mix of the world music and art music and pop that he pulls together so brilliantly sometimes. So it's truly great.
Yeah, the real world records. So I know, I know you're busy, and I didn't want to take up too much of your time. What do you predict about the direction of music in the upcoming years?
Well, I hope that people aren't going to be discouraged about getting into music. You need the best brains, the best creativity, and I hope music continues to attract that, as it has done, since time began. I guess so there's no reason for that to stop. I just hope people, keep focused on music. I think the whole dominance of the visual these days is something that we need to play down a bit, and just being able to sit in a room and close your eyes and listen to a great piece of music for 10 minutes, I think is just great for your brain, great for your consciousness. So music to me is a really important part of life. As Nietzsche said, without music, life would be pointless. So, that's very well said. I saw Bob Dylan and Robert Plant just within the span of a couple of months this year, and both artists, when they went on stage, said, please watch the show through your eyes and listen to it through your ears, not through a video screen. They really want the fans to experience it the way that it's supposed to be experienced. Absolutely.
I mean, it's, people are going to take little pictures and stuff here and there, but it's important to have the experience of music. But on that note, how do you think technology has changed music, both creatively and in production? You think it's changed it?
It has changed, yeah. I mean, as always with this, the digital world, there's an upside and a downside. And the upside is that everything's incredibly accessible. So, I have my laptop with me on the road, and I can sit in the back of the bus and mix tracks. And we could even record a track in a hotel room here, should we, be so inclined. So, there's sort of opportunities for really spontaneous music making. They're great digital, I think. But on the other hand, there's always this sense to me with digital that it sounds like an imitation of the real thing. So when I listen to an old vinyl, like listening to, say, Bob Dylan's old 70s pressing of Bob Dylan's National Skyline on my beautiful record player at home, it sounds amazing. It holds my attention. I'm completely there with it, When I listen to that same thing on a CD, and even more so on an MP3, my attention wanders, and it's not the same experience, So I don't know what you do about that. I guess it's it's like trying to say to people, go to the movie theatres to watch great movies, don't just watch them on Netflix on a little laptop or something, It's a similar kind of thing, But it's the immersion in the experience, I think that's what we want. And I think music and movies as well, theatre as well, give you these immersive experiences that are, some of the most important things that will ever happen to you. I think, I remember concerts I've been to, clearly it's, sort of quite emotional roller coasters sometimes, and that experience is you can't get that with digital media or anything. So
it's the collective experience. Robert Plant, he played with his backing band I just saw him on Saturday was last Thursday was Juju with Justin Adams and that whole Real World music band. And he created this whole ritual that everyone was part of, the collective experience. Right. So there's no isolation in music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it's very wonderful.
So, you have a drummer with him called Dave Smith playing?
Yes.
Was it all because Dave has played on one of the quartet albums, and he's one of my favourite drummers in the world.
Oh, wonderful.
He's on this album Shattering that we did, and plays like a,
I'd like to review. I'd like to review the quartet album. It's on Helium Records, you say?
It is. There are two albums. Yeah, one's called Illuminated, and the other's called Shattering.
Oh, okay.
And, Dave is on Shattering. And if you were to, I'd say, sample a track called Dark Moon Part 2. There's Dark Moon Part 1, which is a sort of spacey kind of instrumental, and Dark Moon Part 2 is this sort of I guess, in the realm of sort of Charlie Mingus in a way, that sort of thing, And Dave's playing on that is just like heroic, absolutely heroic. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, anything else that you'd like to say to the fans out there?
Well, thanks for hanging with us all these years. Please look at our website, which is obviously www.wangchung.com for the tour details. Come see us if you can, and keep in touch with us on Facebook with Wang Chung Band. And the plan is to release another album early next year, and to try and do a bit of touring before Christmas, and hopefully to do something a little bigger touring-wise next year. So the idea is to keep this rolling and to be upping the ante all the time.
Ah, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Well, thank you, Bridget. Thanks for getting in touch with us, and thanks for asking some interesting questions.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful rest of the tour.
Great. Take it easy.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye.